Welcome to the SPL Rundown. I'm your host, Apam. This week, we're back with Frost, Toliy, and we have the coach of the Solar Scarabs, Slainy, joining us as well. A little bit later on, I have an interview with the solo laner for the Valhalla Valkaries, Ducky. But first, I think we need to talk about the last week here without boots, which is week 1 of Phase 2. I think we should probably get started with the Leviathans versus the Valkyries. A bit of a steamroll here from the Leviathans in Game 1. Game 2, the Valks show some fight, but still the Leviathans hold on to win. I guess Raph is still not building boots, even though the boots are available this patch, is sort of what I noted from this game. Was this just sort of a stomp for the Leviathans? Nothing too much to look at here in this sort of lame duck week?
Yeah, basically. I don't think there's I don't think it's surprising to anyone, the results that happened. I mean, it seems like you banned Neath and then you figured out the Valks.
Sure.
So, until the Valks work on that, I guess. Probably going to be pretty similar in most games.
Yeah, looking at the score lines here, Valkyries kind of struggled, I think, specifically in the long lane. I think that Boat had a pretty good... We're doing the Oni Warriors, right, versus the Valks?
No, Leviathans versus the Valks.
Sorry. Okay, the Leviathans versus the Valkyries. Okay, similar story, I guess, actually, in terms of the long lane still. Yarkor, I think, had a little bit of a field day against Emilito. Play Medusa and Chiron. I think that he's still trying to go for that Bluestone meta. We'll see kind of how Yarkor adapts to it, but we really need to see something a little bit more out of the long lane if the Valkyries are going to get some dubs.
All right, this is where it starts to get a little philosophical, because we've gone about a half a year of these boys and everybody wondering, legitimately, if it's like a child goes up and pulls on my pants and is like, hey, Uncle Frost, what's wrong with Emilito and Raph? Aren't they back-to-back world champions? And these are the boys, right? These are the ones that I'm like, oh snap, they've established Smite after everybody actually figured out what's going on. Season 1 doesn't count. And it is a sort of, okay, what can be explained by ping and what can't be? Because to me, honestly, the most telling part is that levels 1 through 10, it feels like they're kind of on par with it.
Sure.
And then beyond that, especially into the late game, it's almost, not to be disrespectful, a somewhat, all right, we run at them. They can't hit us on 100 plus ping, right? I've been playing on 80 the past 2 weeks. I'm used to playing on 40, 40, 60, and even that is absurd. So you
think just when they get engaged on, they sort of lose if the other team is able to engage well, right?
Okay, this is absolute high level, right? Especially the style that these guys play for is that they will not back down. Like sometimes the winning fight will come down to 2 hits, right? Who landed those last 2 hits or something like that. And when you're dealing with that kind of ping, that gap widens severely. But then there's also the question of the macro play, right? There's only so many things. I may be on 500 ping, but I'm not going to start meditation and conquest or something like that. Right. So like what part of their decision making is impacted by that? But then also is there just ping trauma where you almost have like this feeling of hopelessness? I'm going to show up and do what I can. Despite all that, mostly I'm just interested in Raffer. Is he anticipating the boots early? Because he wasn't building any. That's the fun topic to talk about there.
Yeah, I think in Game 1, he didn't build boots at all, and he got it 3rd item in Game 2. So, yeah, Slainy, what's your take on that?
There's a case or a point to be made about the characters that he were picking. He wasn't picking characters that just get in there that need the tank boots. He was playing he did it. I think they had 2 games this week, and even in that set he didn't buy boots both the games, I think. And I think he was just playing Khepri and Geb most of the time. So I think there's a point to be made that you don't necessarily need the tank boots. But I think it was just very misaligned with how he was playing the games, because he was still playing he was just getting in there.
Sure.
The amount of times that he was Khepri ulting himself was just why are you picking this god then? You're just living for half of a second extra. But yeah, I don't think it was the end of the world that he wasn't buying boots. I mean, in our set, Bobby didn't. I don't know if anyone actually paid attention to that. He went power boots, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's the end of the world that he was doing it. And it's also just, I guess, somewhat preparing yourself for the patch. So.
Yeah. I did want to mention Johnny did play pretty good on the Tsukiyomi in game 2, but wasn't able to take his team to victory. It is, when I was talking to Ducky this week, he said I think the ping is a bit more of a mental factor than just a actual like limiting thing within the game. It's just some hesitation occurs when you're trying to make a play or decide what play to make, because there's just that inconsistency in whether or not you're going to hit abilities. Any final thoughts on this Leviathans versus Valkyries set?
We didn't really see anything too different, I think, from Leviathans. I think they're still hiding a lot of stuff there. So I'm kind of curious to see how they're going to adapt, because they're a team that kind of flatlines at a very high level, I would say. But the question is, can they adapt to a new meta when things are being shaken up this much?
Sure. All right, let's move on to the next set of the week. The Olympus Bolts versus the Oni Warriors. I think all I have to say about this set is don't give Barracuda Soul anymore. I think he was 10-0 in game 1. It was a much closer fight in game 2. I think you're going to hear me say that a lot this week. But still, the Soul kind of takes over. I think I watched the last team fight of game 2, and Barra, I think, hits a 4-2 combo and double kills 2 people, and that's basically the game there. Is this is Barra Soul basically the reason for these wins here?
I think bolts are like a weird case. I don't know if like other people feel this way, but when I watch them, it's like even when one of them is popping off with like KDI, I feel like it's always a team win rather than a single person carrying.
Sure.
Because I think that's their strongest suit is that their team play. I think they're like such close friends in real life, and they hang out all the time, and they always enjoy playing Smite together. Like even when they're not scrimming, they're queuing ranked all the time. Like these are the guys that will like be wanting to double block all the time, and I think it shows in like their team play. Because I think like if like when Barra got fed, like they as a team they instinctively know how to play around him, how to play around the lane, how to like get his pressure out the lane into other lanes, and I think they just like flow really well together as a team. So yeah, I actually don't just think it's like Barra. I think it's like a team-wide like effort and carry almost.
Toliy?
Yeah, I kind of agree that you need the synergy and the chemistry, and it seems like they definitely have it. You can just tell with Barra when he has interviews and stuff, the kind of stuff that he says, the way he trolls, and I think that between him and Austin Jake, you heard about the interview that they did before the season started about how their team was kind of formed, that they have that very strong bond going forward. So this is a team that kind of still surprised me individually, because I'm not too familiar with some of the playing styles being dormant during Season 7, but they pleasantly surprised me, and in this set against the Oni Warriors, we can't be too surprised about Barracuda popping off on the Soul, considering in Season 3 when he was with Cloud9 still, with Xenotronics swapping between Jingwei and Soul all the time, so it's kind of Season 3-esque out of him. It might eventually see some bans, depending if we see it again. Like, if he has another performance this good with Soul, it's going to be for real. Maybe this was a one-off, but I think that this has just always been in his wheelhouse, and we might see it again.
Sure. Ross, your thoughts?
Man, that's an absolute Barra classic. It was in the ADC roll queue, I believe, where Zap was, he's got a bit of an ego to him. He's just saying, I didn't take any hunter seriously, especially not Barra. He's just an S here. And then he said, Barra came up behind my tower with the Soul 3 and like hit me, disapparated me, and 3'd out before the tower hit him. This is a comfort pick for sure. This is just Solar Kuda. He's got the old Barracuda combo, as he likes to call it, pressing 2 and 4, or some like to call it dropping the kit. I agree with Aggro there. This a nice separation from the norm while still not getting too crazy with it. Soul is a pretty safe character, does a lot of damage on the way out, very similar to Jingwei, and I would like to see them continue in this manner just to see how crazy, I suppose, like back to form. That's sort of been Barra's storyline. Is this the old Barracuda? I think he's been there. I think he's always been there. I think he's just needed a proper team around him.
Sure.
And the boys are learning to make space around him. That's almost like the a prerequisite from ranked. You know, if you play enough ranked, you have to know how to play around Baron. Like you can't even get into the pro league, surely, if you don't know how to deal with them.
Sure.
But I don't know if it's as threatening as people might say it. I would say the Oni Warriors were looking a little sloppy. Like you don't dogpile her of all characters. Right? You're just asking for a quick way out. Is it as threatening? Does it get taken away? At the very least, he's taking that away from the dragons later on, Hurry Wind or whoever else might pick her up. But it is nice. I like meta tangent characters, right? You can ban the meta, but if you ban the stuff to the side of it, it just opens up so many more options. So, very exciting games and a solid way to finish out the old season.
Yeah. I want to ask a little bit about Lasbra here. And I feel like we've seen a bit of a change in, some of his games where he's able to play a bit more of the support types of picks. It's something that, we know he loves playing things like the Erlang and things like that, but, Fenrir is, I feel like, even pushing that support jungle playstyle a bit more. Is this, something new for Lasbra, or is this, just sort of the way, you have to play jungle in the SPL, be able to wear all these different hats?
Almost, if you want to be a top jungler nowadays, you have to be more than a one trick. You have to do it. You don't have to play everything. You have to have multiple different play styles. Like you have to be versatile. And I think right now, like almost like these supporty junglers are like almost necessary, or at least in the last meta, I would say, which is with like the farm that the junglers would get. Like it would just be way more worthwhile to just keep on spam ganking, and there's like certain gods like Fenrir that are just really good at that. And you can also build like the path, change your build path really easily on some of these gods. Like with Fenrir, you can, if you're ahead, you can just build full damage and one shot everyone and win the game in 20 minutes. Or if it's like kind of even, you can like adapt to be tanky and go like the Pridwin build that like a lot of people are doing. So I think Les is like a pretty smart person. I think he's like grown a lot with the team, and he knows how to make those adjustments in the game. In their game one, I'm pretty sure he ended up just going full damage, but that's because like obviously Barrow was just kind of popping off, so they could just play around that lead really easily.
Any thoughts from Toliy or Frost here on Lasbra?
Yeah, so his Fenrir play wasn't as good as his Kamazat's play, obviously, in game number 2, but like Slainy was mentioning, Fenrir is a god that kind of has that flexibility, so you just pick it up to be aggressive with Haddix's Osiris in that game number 1, especially when you have Venenu, that was playing the Morgan, that can always transform into the Fenrir, so now you got double doggos running at you, trying to bite you. I like his flexibility, being able to go into the utility role that game and then carrying hard on the Kamazats the next game. It wasn't just a Barrow show on the Soul. I think that there was a lot of enablers. It wasn't just Lasbra on the Fenrir, but it was also Awesome Jake on the Yamoja that was able to tower dive Vote like on cooldown. I don't think Vote was having a very good set, but it was mostly because of Awesome Jake just diving and also Lasbra helping out here and there.
Yeah. Frost, your thoughts, or?
Oh, that poor Vote. He was not having a good time, right? It was just, there was a moment in it where he just sort of stopped trying to fight under the tower. He was just going for the wave. He wasn't going to be able to do anything, so might as well farm what he could. But it is nice to see Lasbra branching out slowly out of his god pool. I don't know if he's branching out of his style yet. It does have that versatility, as you said. Fenrir is a god that if you're doing well, you can go into the damaging department, or if you're not doing well, you can just get tanky, and he has one of the nicest setups. It's absolutely free, and it comes with a little cooldown reduction if you hit it.
Sure.
Free stun, ultim, they have to panic. It's also a pain as a support because of your support relics. Support relics, so freaking strong. Having to go beads versus trying to play a lot safer, you can't frontline well against it. It is an absolute pain. It's almost flashbacks to what was it when Splice made the world run with Fenrir Outwash. It is an absolute pain, and then it just also forces you to pick it. Neil Ma did pick it, and just sort of, I don't know, fell flat on his end. Didn't go too crazy for him.
I forgot about the solo during that run either.
Yeah, I was trying my best to not make too many adapting puns during that question there. So, any final thoughts here about the Bolts versus the Warriors?
I think that the Onis got kind of like hard outdrafted in the set. I think, especially going into game 2, I think that they really overreacted to what happened in game one. I mean, like they kind of they picked second pick and then almost like just tried to steal exactly what the Bulls had, and then didn't really care if what they had was even good into what they could have, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And I think they just overreacted in picks and bends for game two.
Toliy Frost, any final thoughts, or you ready to move on?
Well, I'd agree with that for sure. As far as like a setup or anything, Morrigan, Fenrir, Wukong, Hunbats, Chronos, you got a lot of hold down, but for who? Like, where's your burst damage coming from? And then, I think it was almost just trauma. Take these characters that they're known for and try to do something with them, or a much riskier dive. Like that is a really heavy dive comp, especially with the Morgan going into what 2 Hunbats is. What can you do? And it just wasn't executed well. So if it was a draft they intended, it was very risky, and their execution was a little lackluster there. But
speaking of the Oni Warriors adaptation in game number 2, of all the bans that they did, I'm surprised that they didn't take away the Yamoja. Their first 3 bans, I believe, were Tiamat, Gilgamesh, and Ymir. And those are pretty standard bans as well. But if you think as to why Barracuda was so comfortable at La Sol, a lot of that was because of Awesome Jake. And I just think that Yamoja is one of these picks that in the mid to late game, whether you're ahead, especially if you're ahead, but even from behind, it's just so hard to go against the sieges, whether it's offensively or defensively.
To be fair though to the Onis on that point, Jake like has pretty like I feel like historically he's had like I don't know like how other people viewed it from like Ghost for example. We never really cared about Jake's Yamoja. Like it could literally go through the whole game and he wouldn't even pick it half the time.
Yeah,
and I think that's something that he's like really worked on. I don't know if it was like lost because he still hasn't been picking it that much. But I think it's something that he's really worked on. So maybe now it's something that teams will actually have to give respect to and ban. Because previously I actually wouldn't have cared if Jake had gotten it,
Sure. Game 3 of week 1 here. This is the Oni Warriors doubleheader, as well as the Valkyries doubleheader, I guess, right? Oni Warriors versus the Valhalla Valkaries here. Game 1 was, back and forth a little bit, but the Oni Warriors do hang on to win it there. The side lanes, I think, really carried in game 1. And game 2, I think, felt like a old school EU SPL game, very low kills. I think the first kill was, way after 10 minutes, which is really reminiscent of some of these old school EU SPL games. I think maybe to be expected given all the EU players in this match. Dardes, I think, showed that he's maybe got a Tiamat in the bag at least a little bit in this game. He played really well. Is that sort of your take on the Oni Warriors versus the Valhalla Valkaries here? Were the side lanes doing work in game 1?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure most of the games, most of the times these teams or the Valks play, it's usually a duo diff, which is it's like I don't say that in a BM way because obviously like for ML it's kind of the hardest lane to have or the hardest role to have a high ping in. So I think just like unfairly, they're just going to always be at a natural disadvantage, and just the way that Rafa plays, he's not like that much of an aggressive player anymore. It's just going to kind of naturally show where if it goes wrong, the duo lane's going to get hammered a bit, I think. So yeah, I kind of think a lot of the time it just comes down to duo lane diff in their sets.
Sure.
But that's not like to take anything away from like Neil and Vote, because obviously they still played their lane really well. I'm pretty sure was it game 1 when he had Kazembo, he soloed zeros whilst he was just 1v2ing, like literally 100 zeroed him.
Yeah, I think that was game 2.
Yeah.
It was a game Fury fight. It was right at the end of a Gold Fury fight, I believe.
Yeah.
In the middle of that.
all right, the builds very interesting as always as far as Chernobog is concerned. I feel like there's a lot of I don't like the O word or the U word. Underrated, overrated. Those are just flash words for the common man. But there's something about Chernobog that I feel like, why doesn't he get played more? And is it the builds? Is it the order? Is he lacking something? So we're seeing here, Vogue goes in with what was that, 2 crit stars? One of them was the anti-heal, and he's got himself a Deathbringer. Doesn't even go for any of the main crit items, aside from the Wind Demon. And I feel like maybe here it was just, I'm not getting camped out again.
Sure.
I think more players should really start leaning into the Chernobog just because we have seen an insane amount of focus into the long lane. Right? More characters with that sort of safety, at least. I don't know what it is because I feel like out of nowhere, hunter pros start to get a bit more brazen about which picks that they want, right? Like they do well in the earlier into the mid, and then they forget in the late game, you're getting dove nonstop, right? So this is just a consistent reminder that you are vulnerable at every stage in the game, so you better pick one of the 3 you're allowed.
Sure.
I think Chernobog's one of those gods that I don't even think any pro team has ever like fully utilized. I think he like requires like a kind of next level kind of communication because it's so easy to just ult poorly one time and you've just completely lost your lane. Like it's so easy for that to happen. Like let's say your solo is just fighting over there and they call it and you lose your purple in like 2 ways. It's like you come back to lane and you're like it feels like this guy's just gonna solo kill on me. And I think that it's like up to the rest of the other 4 players to learn how to play around Chernobog better. And I think that's why pro players aren't picking him more.
Sure.
I just don't think all of the teams are good enough yet for it.
Yeah. Oh, and Cherno on Barra with the bolts, they got a pretty good system.
Yeah,
right? So, like, it rotates to solo, and then it's a funny little swap where it's like everybody moves over one to the left, make up for all that lost farm. It's kind of neat.
Yeah. I mean, that's like kind of like going off what I said earlier about them. Like they're just like the best team. Like I think that's like probably a big reason that helps them and stuff like that. It helps with those pick Chernobogs.
Sure.
Picks like Chernobog.
Toliy, your thoughts on this set?
Yeah, so I don't think we saw like a really solid Chernobog performance like this ever since like Season 5 Worlds with Arkill after he got that sick Penta kill. And then since then, Season 6, I'm not sure about Season 7, but it seems to have fallen off a little bit. Maybe in Season 8 it's because most hunters are trying to figure out boost on builds. And like Slainy mentioned, when you're rotating as well, you have to calculate the pros versus cons. But out of all the global hunters, so Apollo and Chernobog, you got your Neath ultimate as well, Jingwei passive maybe, but I think that Chernobog might be the best in terms of the quickness at making that impact immediately. So I would like to see more Chernobog in the future, especially when this meta is going to be completely new and foreign to everybody. There might be more team fights around the mid objectives. And just speaking about Chernobog and Vote, I think we also have to look at some of the support plays as well. I think that Neil Ma was playing very aggressive gods this set between both the Sobek and his Paladin Kuzin, bro.
Yep.
Making it really hard, I think, for ML on this set.
I did want to mention a little bit, the Fighter's Mask start, I think, has led probably to a little bit more animosity in the solo lane. I think we saw it in some of the Scarab sets coming up here. But I did want to just mention it now that Ducky did this animosity build with Fighter's Mask on Osiris. Is it just that you need the right god to take advantage of animosity in the solo lane? Or do you think that, the strength of animosity will push those gods to the forefront? Or is it just a sort of niche thing?
I think it's more of the Mask got buffed and it opens up the early game. It's a mix of like Mask being really good early game and Bluestone getting nerfed a bit early game. With like the sustain and stuff, like it just opened up Mask. And if you have Fighter's Mask, it just like you don't even have to get a starter, which is like what Ducky did, where he just went straight into Animosity at level 17. Or you can get like a delayed like Warrior's Axe. Like that, it just makes your build a lot more versatile. Where Bluestone obviously doesn't.
Sure.
Yeah, I believe Adapting said that last week, didn't it?
Yeah.
It's the Fighter's Mask. It's just that flexibility, because if you are ever going to do an animosity build, you're probably rushing like tier 2 boots or something like that. You just end up on the back foot, hoping to catch up in the late. Fighter's Mask, now you're never on a back foot. You're perfectly fine. And the trade-off is that you get to be very tanky and hit very hard in the end. And there was no backside, or there was no downside to the mask. Now, similar to what was it? Shoot, I think it was just at the start of this season. We saw some animosity, but you're more likely to just kind of lose before you can get it online.
it's hard to speculate how effective this actually is until we see it more consistently in the meta and more players start doing it, not just one particular player.
Sure.
But I think that out of all the gods in Smite, Osiris might be, top tier at the animosity build in general, being able to lock you down with his whole entire kit. Might see gods like Vamana potentially with his AoE basic attacks if you have Frostbound as well, or Hasten Katana, or both even, to really utilize that item. If you can do some really good jank with Jean Kui in the solo lane with animosity, that would be troll, getting double hits there. But I don't think we'll see that in the SPL anytime soon. Didn't Nika actually do something similar, except going for compassion instead of like double compassion?
So Sot did that. Sot did that in our set. We had double compassion. He goes on Guan Yu a lot.
On
It's
Guan
like,
Yu, yep.
Yeah, because obviously he's just dashing around. Like he's like not that super hard dive character, so he gets a lot of value out of it.
Thankfully Slainy is here to talk about the Solar Scarabs versus the Tartarus Titans. Maybe not a set you want to talk about, but I think, game one, Paul's Hell shows up. I feel like you guys gave up a lot of objectives. Maybe just the timings were just a bit off. I feel like there was a Gold Fury that you could have maybe taken, and then, the timing just felt off and you guys give it up, and it just felt like game one, you were on the back foot and weren't able to sort of catch up. And then, game two, you guys look better, but I think Cyclone has sort of come into form lately and really helped propel the Titans in game two. You want to give us a breakdown of the set, Slainy, from your guys' perspective?
Sure. It might come across as a bit excusey, but this week was like the worst week for Smite servers ever. We tried to scrim, I think it was 4 days, and every single day, servers went down the second scrim started. We got 10 minutes of scrims this week. But, I know it's like a big excuse, but we literally had no scrims this week. On top of the fact that no one really wanted to scrim in the first place because it was like the last patch, and then we also didn't find out until that week that we were going to have a double header because we were just like, maybe it's like a bad thought process, but it's like we only have one set, it's on like the last patch, that doesn't matter, we'll probably be fine with 1 week of scrims. Then that week comes around and like, oh yeah, you have two games this week, and we're like, oh, we probably should have scrimmed a bit more. And then servers went down, couldn't scrim, servers went down, couldn't scrim. We got into one game, 10 minutes, servers went down, and then the next day servers went down. So it was just like really unfortunate timing for us.
Yeah, I think there were some Zap tweets about servers going down when the scrim started, and he was feeling real happy about that. So
yeah. But obviously we didn't play that well. I don't think we particularly drafted that well, which is obviously on me too. I mean, you could just kind of tell that like our team play wasn't really there. I don't think we came in there with like a really rock solid plan, and that's not because we underestimated them. It's just like kind of hard to tell what we think they were going to do. We have to like predict. We haven't played in like a few weeks. Like no teams have really. Like mini metas have changed. The bonus patch came out since the MSI, so like the whole like meta could have been different. So it was like hard to tell what teams valued, and then obviously due to lack of practice. But I think that like goes to show like even in game two, we looked cleaner than we did in game one, which I know is like a common theme for us. But like we did like kind of kick us into shape in game two. I think we actually played like somewhat well. Like we kind of came back into it, and then until we didn't.
yeah. Toliy, your thoughts on this set, the Solar Scarabs versus the Titans?
I'm actually glad that Slainy was here because I wanted to ask, like, were you guys just trying to play your own game, or were you guys trying more to maybe counteract what the Tartarus Titans were bringing at you with the Hell pick?
It's hard to say. I think we're always a team that tries to stick what we know best, especially like with a team of rookies. They're still getting used to like the style of play that you have to have in SPL because it's way different than all the other leagues. So I think like in general we try to stick with our own game plan, and maybe have like 1 or 2 picks that we can use to adjust. So it's a hard question to ask, but answer. Sorry. I don't know. I just think they just came well prepared to pick some bans better than us.
Yeah, because my follow-up question was going to be, normally it's easy to deal with Hell in terms of anti-healing, but I was wondering if game number 2, if you wanted to try something a little bit more spicy and go for maybe walls, between the Odin, Kabrak, and maybe 4 on her or something along the lines of really trying to trap this Hell, because it seemed like Paul was a nightmare in game number 1 for you guys.
I mean, realistically, I don't think the the Hell was too much of our issue. Hell is a character where if she gets a lead, it's just like suffocating, and it's really hard to play into. But I think there were like other issues across the board, like with how they were playing, with how we were playing. Like, I don't even think. I think he could have been playing any character, and it probably would have been a somewhat similar result, if I'm being honest. So, sorry if it's like not like a great answer for it, but.
It's a bit more iconic though.
It is a bit more iconic, yeah.
That Hell that we haven't seen in so long. I mean,
it's definitely something you like get up with chills when he locks it in. It's like, oh, shit, dude.
Yeah, especially now he's on the team that used to ban it out all the time.
True.
So he's like, all right, new level of Hell to try and see out. How'd you feel about it? You know, preparation or not, Hell pick? Is that something that's going to be contested to the point where Shinto was picking it up last year?
It's hard to say without like. Playing too much of it, especially like with the new patch.
Yeah.
But I think Hell is like once someone picks it, it's then at the back of everyone's mind, and they're like, "Oh, we have to think about Hell here." And I think it's kind of like a risky like trigger to pull in playing Hell, because once it's there, it loses a bit of value once people know that the teams are playing it. But I could definitely. It's one of those gods that some people are just so good at that it's like just a nightmare sometimes, like Shinto.
Yeah.
And then obviously Paul.
You think he was testing things out? Because in the first one he went with the pendulum, and then second one he went alternate timeline. Obviously more pressure, so it's like, well, gotta have some survivability in this. Or is that more of like a Paul thing? That just the rumor that he doesn't like to die. Oh, that was you that said that, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's me.
He plays for his KD.
Yeah, he's the biggest KD player. I think he was probably just trying stuff out. I mean, they probably also felt really confident where they could try something out after the first game because it wasn't that competitive. So it's just like, let's see how this goes. Maybe it was like something they tried in scrims and it like didn't have the best success. But they're like, I mean, last game doesn't matter. This patch doesn't matter. Let's just see how it goes, kind of thing. So it could just be like testing the waters.
Yeah, fair enough.
Any other thoughts from you guys? I did note down about Paul's Hell here, but I think he probably was maybe falling back on a comfort pick a bit too. Especially this is being the first week, but also right before this new patch. Just play something that you've played millions and millions of times, and see how it goes. Right? I think that's my uneducated guess of why Paul picked Hell.
I was going to say it's the second half of it. This is when he starts to ramp up. I don't think he's has he had good phase one performances, like routinely speaking, because Paul is the dark horse run. Yeah, it's like, all right, we have to do the best that we can, and now is when I'm just going to pull out the best that I can. And almost has like a very not selfish playstyle, but very much like a hard carry from within the pocket. And I don't know if he's just put his foot down and it's just like, all right, everybody get around me now.
I think that the Hell was also to complement the play style of his front line. I mean, when I think of the Tartarus Titans, Benji, Scary D, Aurora, I think of very aggressive frontliners, and their picks kind of reflected it. Benji playing Hercules both games, Aurora with Fenrir in game number 2, double killing with Yamoja from Aurora in game number 1 in the Hell and Paul. So I like the Hell pick. I don't know if that's something that we're going to see consistently, though. I think this might have been a one-off simply because everything is going to change in week number 2.
Yeah. Well, and like Slainy says, it does, it's in the back of all these teams' minds now, and, you never know when you might need to start banning Hell, and once Hell starts getting banned, I feel like that it starts opening up gods and things like that,
And brings about the worst meta of all time, healing meta.
Healers.
So we know who to blame if it starts up.
Yeah, blame Paul. All right, let's move on to the next set of the week here. The Tartarus Titans versus the Camelot Kings. It was a Kings 2-0, but I think this set was pretty even between both of these teams. There's a big FG steal from Netroid in game 1 that really led to the Kings snowballing. And, variety on this Herc just looked unkillable. I mean, we have to talk about how Herc has looked in this patch, especially. I don't know about you, but I think he was just literally just W-keying. I don't even think he probably turned the auto run on and just didn't turn it off and just was like going straight at these guys. I just don't think you can you could have even damaged. I mean, Paul played the Soul, and you think, oh, you know, Barrow popped off, maybe Paul can pop off too, and he's just like smacking Variety for 70 damage with the autos, and it was just a different type of, I don't know, I haven't seen, I guess we've seen Herc do that in the past, but haven't really seen Herc do that this season yet, so it was fun to watch. Is that how you guys felt about it? You know, the Kings and Titans evenly matched, but the Kings just pulled out all the stops here?
Okay, so I think that Variety is one of these players that is just kind of whatever mood he's in, that he'll play a god, and then he'll just perform well with it. Like, ever since his like season 3 performance at Worlds, when he was like playing Thanatos, Ratatasker, you know, Tyr obviously, just having the time of his life. This is a guy that probably should have gotten MVP at season 3 Worlds, despite losing that Worlds. So that's the kind of player that you're dealing with. So it's no surprise that he's playing Herc at the highest of levels. And speaking of Hercules, it's not just Variety that popped off with Herc. I think Hercules had 100% win rate in week number
I believe
1.
you're right. I believe you're correct, Toliy.
Yeah, so this is a god that I think is just going to be highly contested, I think, moving forward. Even with the meta changes, I think Hercules is still a very strong option.
Frost, your thoughts?
Mostly looking at the, was it Terra getting picked into a Yamoja.
Sure.
Oh my god, I say. So any character that has knockups in the kit into a Terra is by far one of the most frustrating experiences in this game. Now, what makes her more annoying is that she also has a lot of movement, right? A lot of displacement, a lot of lockdown, a lot of things that just get in the way. So I feel genetics, without giving away too much, right? Like we've talked, him and I just feel like this is going to be his phase, right? Like after how the last one went, they were running the entire thing. Didn't do too well in the improv group stages, right? They probably didn't feel too happy with that one. And I think if there was anything that was going to get them kicking into overdrive even more, it was probably that.
Not making Phase 1 playoffs, you mean?
Not making Phase 1 playoffs after having done so well, and also like I don't want to put his business out there, right? But it's just let's say his performance ate him up quite a bit.
Sure.
Yeah, and so it's really showing that he's not letting it cripple him, which is its own topic, right? For I don't know, maybe your podcast with the e-girls, or what is it that you do still? But yeah, some players do get into their mental, and it's almost a bit of a scarring. And for him, he's just got it on his shoulder, and he's ready to go again.
That's good to hear. All right, Slainy, your thoughts on this set?
I think like Variety just had like one of the best sets he's had in a really long time. There was one player, I remember, I can't remember which game it was in, but they were like kind of dancing around Fire Giant for a bit, and he just pressed 3 and walked behind the front line of the Titans and just pushed them both at the same time. He didn't blink, he literally just walked behind them and pushed them. And I just remember watching that and thinking like, okay, like how are these guys ever going to lose this game if they're playing like that? There's like confidence teams, and I think Kings are probably one of them. I think, like especially Harry. I mean, I don't think he like takes losses bad, but I think when he's winning, he's like, you know, he's like the type of guy that's like yelling in your face. Like if he could, like, you know, if he was like next to you, he'd be like shit talking you the whole time. And I just remember seeing that, and I'm like, the Kings are just going to win this set. I think off of that, with how much confidence they had going in. And then also they obviously wanted to really watch the England game, which I think probably motivated Big Man more than anyone. He was probably just screaming at them to end every opportunity that they could have.
Unfortunate for all the England fans out there, though.
Let's just move on from that one.
Any other thoughts? We've sort of gotten through all of my notes about this set. Any other thoughts that you guys had about the Kings and the Titans here?
I have one thought still. I think that we've seen Scary D have some good pop-off games, but then we've also seen him have some really cold games now. Credit to where credit is due. Titans played well, like phenomenally well. But I think that there needs to be a microscope on Scary D and how he kind of enables the Titans, because they need just more consistency out of the jungle.
Foster Slainy, any other thoughts here or final thoughts on this set?
No, I think I agree with Toliy, especially on that last point. I think Scary really needs to... It doesn't even need to be like carry as hard as he is every game. I just think he needs to find like a bit of a higher middle ground. of consistency.
Sure.
So yeah, I just agree with Toliy.
Yeah, it's definitely a change of tone. Here's at the start of the year. Right? It's not that we make excuses, but we're more lenient. You know, new teams, new rosters, new roles, new season, whatever. You're getting into the serious part now. This is where it's all leading into the don't be the bottom two. And you know, we're fighting for the world championship here and for a better placement and whatnot.
Yeah.
So Scary D, he is performing better, but still as inconsistent as when he started off, I think.
Sure.
You know, it really is a toss-up of like, which Scary are you getting today?
All right, I think we have to move on to what I consider the set of the week. You know, the Dragon Slayers, the Solar Scarabs rise again here. And I think, you know, I was, to be honest, pretty surprised at how game one went because it was such a, you know, a drubbing from the Jade Dragons, I think, in game one. You know, maybe you guys just need to lose those first games, right? You know, to get the Zapman buff against other teams, and then I don't know, game two, you guys just control every single thing. You know, Layers pops off. I think SLT played great on the Hercules as well. You know, I don't know, it's just something that you guys do against this Jade Dragons team. What goes on in these matches? Because we've seen it, I mean, time and time again. The Solar Scarabs are always ready to beat the Jade Dragons.
I mean, well, maybe it's like a boring answer, but I don't think it's anything necessarily to do with it being the dragons specifically. Obviously, it'd be nice to say that we're just like their kryptonite or whatever. But I think it's more game one. We came in, we wanted to try something. Obviously, it didn't work out. But like morale never goes down really. And if someone's like, you know, dipping a bit, like we have other people to bring each other up. So it's like always a good environment. And I think without like going too in depth after the first loss, we're like, the way that we're playing right now isn't working out. Let's change it up. Again, without having, I don't want to give away like anything too much, but it was just like we needed to change how we were playing in the games, and we needed more confidence because it was like the same thing as our previous set. We were just kind of giving up too much, not playing how we should be playing. And I think like after getting stomped in game one, it's like, we know that we're better than this. We know the mistakes that we made. It was a lot of outplaying ourselves, or you know, making mistakes ourselves. And I think we're very good at like adjusting as a team and noticing those mistakes between games. And for some reason, I feel like I don't know how to phrase it, but I think with the Dragons, it seems like if they lose game one to us, they get in their heads sometimes. So maybe that is like a kryptonite thing. Or sorry, if they lose a game to us, it seems like they're not really willing to adapt sometimes. It's like they're very stubborn in how they want to play. So they lose that game to us, and then they don't really adjust to what the issues were.
Sure. I do have to ask here about the solo Chiron. I think everyone is wondering. You know, I think some people were thinking, oh, it might have been a misclick.
No.
That's all part of the plan.
It was a solo troll messaging me saying, "Yo, I really want to play Chiron. I think it's really good. Here's the draft. Can we do it?" And then it was like, "Sure." And then we did. We brought it up, and everyone's like, "Sure, we could try it. Let's do it." And then here we are.
Yeah.
10 minutes of scrim still.
It worked out, right?
Playing Chiron solo.
Worked out in the end.
It was just the mental warfare.
Yeah.
They just didn't expect anything from us the next game.
Sure. Toliy, your thoughts on the Chiron solo? You know, you are sort of a solo laner in your past, been in the SPL playing solo and things like that. What do you think Solar Troll is getting at here with the Chiron?
Yeah, I'm all too familiar with the tactical feeding here from game number one strategy. Real talk, I think hunters from levels like 1 through 4 do have lane pressure against warriors in general until the jungler shows up, but you know, like SPL level, I think that it's a long shot, and not sure the entire mentality. I think against some Wukong, there's kill potential, but at the end of the day, you have to respect the jungler. But I called it last week in terms of the kryptonite that Solar Scarabs are Jade Dragon's kryptonite, and that they would win this set 2-1 last week. But I'm going to rephrase that statement and say that Zapman is this team's kryptonite, actually. Like, you look back at Season 5 Worlds, what was it, Trifecta, I think it was, against the United Squad, Season 6, SK. in Survival Season 7 PK against Ghost. I mean, like, it just doesn't stop. Sap is definitely in their heads, and like, what was it, the Fire Giant call was kind of nuts in that set as well. Like, I'm more than sure I'm willing to bet quite a bit of money that that was a Zapman call on that. So that was nice to see that the strategy is definitely playing chess when I think everybody else was playing checkers.
Yeah, I think even earlier in phase one, the Solar Scarabs were able to take a set off the J Dragons and even games off these guys. So definitely does seem a bit of a Zapman curse for Mike and the boys there.
I'm pretty sure we're 2-1 right now.
Yeah.
Like in games. So.
I mean, if you look at it, you lose game 1, and then all of a sudden you see the Zuler being locked in. Dude, Dragons were shooketh after that Zuler.
To be fair to the Chiron solo, just like maybe I shouldn't be defending it. I should probably just like write it off. But we actually did have like a lot of pressure through that lane due to the Chiron. He was actually like 2 levels up at one point just from like being able to bullying him. So it wasn't as bad. Like honestly, if because when I was watching the game, it didn't feel like it was over in like 23 minutes, whatever it was, 22 minutes.
Yeah,
it genuinely felt like we still could have done things if we had just made better decisions, even with like the huge deficit that we had. So I genuinely don't think it was as bad as it looked. But that's easy to say.
yeah. Frost, your thoughts on? Or go ahead, Toliy.
I want to piggyback a little bit more on the Hunter solo as well. Thinking back to Season 2 Cyclone Spin days, he was playing a bunch of Hunters and Chronos as well, and I think with this new meta of not needing boots, since you are having the lane pressure early on, you might have that 1 to 2 level lead, and that extra movement speed might be able to actually get these kills in the mid-season.
That's an interesting thing to look out for, especially with all these changes that are happening. Frost, your thoughts on this set here, Solar Scarabs versus the J Dragons?
Yeah, something about the culture between these two. Even in phase 1, when I said was it the Dragons were going to go on an undefeated run, I was like, no, they're going to drop to Scarabs or Bolts first. I don't know what it is. I've already stated before that it feels like they're not nearly as tightly grouped up and like in sync with each other as they were in the previous sets. And this just seems to be the most disjointed. I don't think they've hit rock bottom yet. I think they all really just have to end up flat on their backs before they can start working to reach back to the top again. They've still got some falling to do. I also don't know if it's just mood dependent, because if we're talking from like from a personal, very anecdote perspective, the last week of Smite, that's not one I wanted to play either. From I just want to play some fun video games. I didn't want to play that one. Not when boots are going to get removed this week.
Yeah.
So in the end, it is a game, right? And I would say that the last week of Smite was probably the least fun in a while, just knowing what's coming over the horizon. So
yeah, it is just a bit unfortunate that it's just unsynced by 1 week. Bit of a lame duck week, if you will.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts about this set here? I had in my notes here that Layers and SOT were pretty dominant in games 2 and 3. I don't think they died in game 2, Layers and SOT. So really great play from them, and I think very few deaths in game 3 as well. I think Layers went 12-1, so he definitely popped off the set.
It's a bit of deja vu, actually, from the 2 Worlds runs that Zap did with his team, where it would be the jungler and the soul laner popping off together. Once you can get inbound in there in the same way that it was essentially Neoma, Scaredy, and Cuvo, like, I think he's fixing to remake his world champion team.
Sure. And we have to, obviously give some props here to Slainy, right? You are giving all the J Dragon secrets, right?
Yeah,
for the
of
Solar
course.
Scarabs, right? So
It's all me.
Yeah.
They don't do anything. It's all me.
Yeah, it's all Slainy here.
To be fair though, I actually wanted to shout out that I think Bobby, your inbound has actually improved like an incredible amount, especially compared to last year. I don't think anyone would. Well, maybe not anyone, but I think a lot of people would have doubts in saying that Bobby was going to be a really good support player this year. But I really think he's changed lots of people's minds, and I think he's still making some like these mistakes where it's just like, why is he going in there? But if you look at how he's played and how he's done, and if obviously you guys can't, but if you heard the comms, like he has a really good shot caller. Him and Steve work really well together. I think people should really start giving Bobby a lot more credit than he's currently getting. I think he's like almost an unsung hero on our team right now. I think a lot of people like will see like Sot or Layers have these insane KDAs, but not give the support. I mean, in the second game, Bobby went 0-1 and 13.
Sure.
On the Geb, the Geb was his call. Like it was like a perfect pick. He was super confident with it. Like I think Bobby deserves a lot more credit than he's getting, basically.
Shout outs to Bobby. Any final thoughts from you guys about this set here?
Just to play devil's advocate on the last statement there as well, I do believe that Bobby's comms are next level, but I have to ask what the comms were like when Bobby failed to zone PBM's Yamoja for that Fire Giant steal. How was that mentality like?
To be fair on that steal, on his steal, it was less of Bobby's mistakes and more mistake on. I mean, this isn't shade. We've already spoken about it. It was more on Brendan. He portaled out and then went behind the FG and then tried to ult through. When it should have been more, he just secure with the 2 and then ult the fight after. Because we were calling burst on it. But I don't think we weren't like it was just like, oh, they got it, but we carried on like trying to fight after. I think we got 2 kills off of it. Maybe it was just Mike, but I don't think like no one was like too upset, or no one was like, oh, why didn't you zone him? I think it was Bobby like, I missed my ult, because he kind of just backstepped it pretty well by Mike.
Yeah.
It was more of Mike juking it than Bobby missing it, if that makes sense. So I don't think like anyone was too like upset by them getting FG. It was just like, oh, what I can't say probably. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on the show.
Them's the breaks, right?
Yeah.
This week, I had the pleasure of sitting down with the solo laner for the Valhalla Valkaries, all the way from England here. Ducky joined me to talk about Phase 1, Phase 2, and look at back at his career a little bit throughout all these years. Check it out. Hey guys, I'm here with Ducky, the solo laner for the Valhalla Valkaries, to talk a little bit about Phase 1, Phase 2, and look back on his career on the whole a little bit as well. So I wanted to start off, this is my first time interviewing a member of this squad. So, I'm sure it's just a bit unlucky with the ping, but, what is sort of your first impressions of this team? You're teaming with sort of a mix of players, some SPL veterans and some newcomers too, and, you yourself have been in the SPL quite a bit. How was, the first impressions of teaming with all these people been?
I mean, I've played with Rafa and Emil before. That was the first people I played with in SPL.
Sure.
In my first game ever. But Zirhos, I planned to play with like a few years before, and we just never did. And Johnny, Johnny's always been good, but he's never wanted to move for SPL.
Yeah.
Because of school or other things. So I've always wanted to team with a lot of the guys on my team at the moment. So
sure.
It's nice to have it all come together. It sucks under the circumstances.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, it's something I was looking forward to.
Sure. I mean, to be honest, there were some unexpected wins. I mean, understanding that the ping is definitely a problem. You guys were able to, I think, beat the Oni Warriors in Phase 1, and you were able to take some games off other teams as well. Was that, I mean, we consider them unexpected, but is that just sort of like the fruits of your scrim labor and things like that, or were they just as unexpected for you guys as well?
I think those were the games Loki was available, right?
Early on, yes, but I think later on you guys have taken some games off of teams even without Loki. As well. So I don't know, there are, some signs of life, I think. It's not like, I don't know, that might even sound too too downtrodden as well, right? I mean, I think ping is probably a huge issue for this team, especially with so many players not able to, it's just hard to hit shots, I think, right?
I think it's more mentally, because
sure.
It's frustrating when you usually hit these things and you're kind of worried to go for them just in case they do miss. So it kind of sucks having to play with that in the back of your mind.
Yeah,
I feel like we've gotten used to it.
Yeah. Was it at first like you were maybe second guessing just playing the game?
It was like, do I go in here? Usually I'd hit this, but what if I miss? I'm hecking dead. So do I still go for that or do I not? And it's just thinking about that constantly.
Yeah.
Kind of sucks.
Sure. Can you talk a little bit more about Johnny? He is sort of the newcomer to the SPL, has played SEC, SML for a while, been really, I guess, playing really well in those leagues and has now made it to the SPL. How has Johnny's transition to the SPL been in your eyes? Do you think he's sort of risen to the level if necessary?
I think he's done really well, especially with Ping on the side. Like he was raring to go.
Yeah.
And even in games, he's always telling the Zeros what to do and yelling at Zeros if he does something wrong. Like he's not afraid to get stuck in there. So I think that's really good for him, and I hope he continues doing that.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. He's bossing some people around. Let's talk, a little bit about Phase 2. There is this big mid-season patch coming up. I wanted to maybe get your opinion on what you think sort of the main changes this will bring to the solo lane are.
I think solo lane is just going to be a farm fest. I don't think people are going to want to fight over there.
Sure.
Because the amount of XP that's just sitting around. Like you've got the Scorpion, you've got the little mini buff, then you've got Greater Scorpion, then you've got Johnny's back camps, which I'll be taking, and the enemy jungler's back camps. Like, there's so much to do now, so I don't think many people will be fighting over there. And then you're just going to rush for your starter item,
sure.
Your level 20 starter item.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's maybe more room to play, mages or hunters in the solo lane because there's more farm, or is it still going to be, the King Arthurs and the Cucullins, as some people have said? I think Nico was talking on a recent SPL roll call about how he thinks it's just still going to be King Arthur and Cucullin. Do you feel the same way about that?
I think it'll still be like tanky characters, like frontliners, because you're tankier so much early on now, just because you can rush that defense item. So I think those characters will still be picked because you rush your item quicker and you get more farm, so you're tankier anyway. So I think those characters will still be pretty prominent.
Yeah. It doesn't make it easier to get the mages there. I think we've seen some mages, right? Like Final K has played Baron, but it's sort of been a very rare occurrence. So now that you don't have to build boots, the patch came out this week. What are the item you're most excited to build instead of building boots now?
Hey, yo, you can't be. What do you mean? I can't be leaking that. This is aired before SPL, right?
This is airing before SPL.
You're trying to catch me slipping here.
Okay, maybe not that, but what is a fun item that you think has maybe some room to be built now because there is an extra slot in the build available? Is there anything that's like caught your eye?
I think people are just going to keep building Rangda's Mask.
Sure.
Like Rangda's Mask, and then because that has so much power on it, you just go a defense item afterwards.
Wait, like the full Rangda's Mask or just the Fighter's Mask?
Oh, just the Fighter's Mask, sorry. Just the Fighter's Mask, and then you'd rush like a defense item, like a Genji's, even a Gaia. You probably get Gaia there if you really wanted. But I think you either do that, or people just rush Transcendence or Solio, depending on the matchup.
Sure. So going into Phase 2, I'm sure Phase 1 probably wasn't up to your standard, but, considering the ping and things like that, I'm sure your sort of expectations and goals for this whole season have maybe changed a little bit. Is it safe to say that? Given sort of the whole outcome of, COVID and the visa situation?
Yeah, I mean, it sucks. We just don't really want to get demoralized going into Worlds. I feel like, as soon as we move, we'll be popping. At least in my opinion. But we need to fix a lot of stuff before getting there. Yeah. And we can't blame Ping on that. So we'll work on that while we can and then get some wins in the bag. Hopefully a lot. I want to have a little LAN. That'd be fun.
That would be fun.
But, we'll work on those issues, and by Worlds we should be popping and ready to go if we're on the Ping.
Yeah, that's good to hear. You mentioned sort of earlier on when I brought up that you're teaming with some veterans now about Email and Raffer and how you teamed with them back in Energy. Can you talk about maybe how it's changed since those Energy days to maybe how it is now? Email took a couple years off from playing in the SPL, played in SEC and things like that. And, Raf sort of went from a team with a lot of expectations, I think, the past 2 years to a team that now, especially after Phase 1, maybe not as, stressful or, things like that. The expectations are just a bit different, right? So can you talk about how these two experiences maybe contrast and compare?
I mean, when I first played with them, it felt like I didn't have to do a lot. I could just kind of don't get soloed and then rotate when they tell me to. And that was like my first SPL game.
Yeah.
Now, I kind of do the same thing, but I'm worried if Duo Lane is going to die level 1. It's like the same scenario.
Sure.
But No, I feel Emil takes the lead a lot. I think he did that years ago as well.
Mhm,
I'm not
mhm.
100% because my memory's not the best.
Yeah.
So Emil's still popping off. Rafa seems very chill, and he kind of takes charge if there's like arguments or anything like that,
Sure.
or disagreements, I should
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have veterans on the team who like know what to do
Mm,
in
mhm.
those scenarios.
Yeah. I mean, you yourself, I think, can probably call yourself a veteran of the SPL now. You've been playing, what, almost 5-6 seasons now, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so...
I definitely have one of the strongest mentals. Oh my goodness, the L's I've taken. I don't know how I'm still here. I'm surprised. I'm not gonna lie.
Has your, perspective about the SPL or Smite or, professional gaming, has that changed, from earlier on in your career now that you're sort of 5 years, 6 years in?
I mean, I'm still very lucky to do it. It's still like a dream job.
Yeah.
At least for me, it was and still is. I will say it was like mentally taxing at times, but especially when you continue to lose and you just feel like, what are you doing? What's the point?
Sure.
Why are you still doing this? Go do something else. But it is something I love doing, and I'm very grateful for that. So I hope I can make something of it and actually win.
Yeah. Can you maybe talk about any sort of rivals you might have had in your SPL journey? And then sort of on the flip side of that coin, are there any maybe mentors or people who've helped you as you've navigated through the SPL as well?
I can't really think of any rivals off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I want to beat everybody.
Yeah.
I can't really think of like one person I want to take down.
Yeah.
But the people who've helped me, everyone I've teamed with has always been great. Like Fumble and Lobster and Danny.
Yeah.
They helped me come out of my shell a lot, and it was really nice teaming with them.
Danny being Fails, right?
Yeah, Fails, yeah. So Fails, Fumble, and Lobster.
Sure.
Those guys were great, and they helped a lot. Wowie, Bobby, living in the house with those guys, it was fun and a good experience. I think that was... what am I trying to say? I don't know, it was just nice to be in a house together and like talk about the game and whatnot, and do stuff outside of the game to really bond as a team.
Sure.
Cassia helped a lot. If I ever get nervous, he did a little meditation session with me. That was great. Weekend, he was a really nice guy when I was on the team. I feel like he gets a lot of shit, and he's a lovely guy. I don't know why so many people hate him, but yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of people I can name, like the big guys as well.
Sure.
I feel like meeting everybody's just helped me along the way.
Yeah,
and I really appreciate that.
So I'm all out of questions here, and usually that means that the last question of the interview comes up, and I'm asking, who you're beefing with, who's making the scripts, go bad. We need to start some more beef and drama here, especially after the Tower Boy thing gets sort of simmered down, right? So, and give some shout outs and things like that. Feel free to, the soapbox here is yours if you want to complain about Smite or anything like that. Complain about other teams. The floor is yours, Ducky, to say what you need to say.
Wait, isn't this airing on Smite Game? I can't be complaining about the game. I'm gonna get fined. What do you mean? You're baiting me again.
I'm just trying to stir the pot a little bit, Ducky. That's all.
Just trying to stir my paycheck. Who do I want to beat? I'm trying to think. Hold on, you have to give me a moment here.
Sure.
There's a few names popping up. Frick, man, I can't think of anybody.
No one to call out here?
No one to call. I want to beat Leviathans.
Yeah.
I really want to beat Leviathans.
Okay. That's a good goal to have. What about any shout outs? Any people you want to shout out here now that you sort of have the floor?
Shout out to my team. We're doing great. One win at a time. We're getting there.
Sure.
Shout out my mom. Love my mom. Shout out Isaac, Ash, and the boys. Who else? Shout out Bobby. Get bugged. And yeah, thank you for the interview. Shout out you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ducky. Thanks for coming on and gracing us with your insights about your team and things like that. Is really wonderful. Also, shout out to shop.smiteproleague.com. Get yourself some nice SPL merch, especially some Valhalla Valkaries merch. Support our SPL players here, and I'm repping here. Got my Valkyries hoodie, so go out and get some Smite Game merch while you guys can. Thank you so much for joining me for this interview, Ducky, and I wish you and your team the best of luck in this upcoming phase and going into Worlds as well.
Thank you. I forgot to thank the fans as well and the casters. Appreciate you guys.
Shout out to the fans and casters. We love you guys. All right.
Shout out you guys.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Ducky.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
All right, it's time for us to make our picks here for Week 2, Phase 2. And we'll start with Frost on the first one here. Leviathans versus the Jade Dragons. Frost here, who you got?
Right. Okay. So, in any normal given situation, I would say that the Dragons would win this, and there's also to account for their moods, but blah, blah, blah. New meta. That's all I'm thinking of here. I think Leviathans have an advantage because they pick the, I suppose, the not most dominant, but safe and rewarding.
Sure.
Right? They're not going to be going like, oh, this is definitely support Cali right now. Like, this is so busted, right? Whereas the Dragons do strike me as the kind that were like, oh, yo, bro, we have to try this out right now. So, Dragons fanboy, so want to give them the 2-0, and we'll jot that down as 2-0, but I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up as a 2-1 Leviathans.
Sure. Slainy, who you got in this one? The Atlantis Leviathans versus the Jade Dragons.
I think the Dragons take it 2-0. I think I'm not like on the same opinion where I think the Leviathans are just like always doing the same thing and they never experiment. But I think that knowing that the way like people like Mike think about Smite, like he is just always thinking about Smite, like he's always typing like paragraphs and paragraphs of his like thoughts and ideas. And I think whenever there's a new meta or a big meta change, that Mike and Sam are going to be like really big like front runners in that regard. So I think the Leviathans aren't as bad as people say, where they're like one tricks or only one play style. But I think that the way the Dragons will adapt will be a lot more thought out. But that's no shade at Leviathans. I just think that's just how good people like Mike are at stuff like that.
Sure.
So I think Dragons 2-0.
Toliy, how about you?
So in this set, the Leviathans against Jade Dragons, just piggybacking off of what Slainy mentioned earlier, I think meta shifters, you think of PBM, you think of Aurora specifically, and I think in this set, Leviathans are not as creative as the Jade Dragons, just historically. I think that PBM will bring us something really spicy. Maybe Final K will do his A to Z, Z to A series starting in week number 2. Who knows what he's going to bring out? I mean, if SOT is playing the Chiron, who knows what Final K is like, hey, I'm not going to be outdone by Assad. So we'll see. I think Jade Dragons will ultimately win this set 2-0, simply because of the meta that they're going to bring, being the very first set of the this mid-season patch.
Yep.
It's going to be spicy.
It is going to be spicy. I think as much as I want to pick the Leviathans, it's so hard to pick them going up against the Jade Dragons, you know, just given the history of the players on these two teams, I think. So I'm with the Dragons as well. All right, Slainy, let's start with you here for the next set of the week, which is going to be the Camelot Kings versus the Olympus Bolts. Who you got in this one?
I think this is genuinely the hardest matchup to call out of like all of the SPL. I know everyone always says like they're like, or you know, people will probably say they're like 50-50 all the time, but I genuinely have no idea who would win this set. I think either team could just wake up and then whoever's on the right side of the bed is going to win.
Yeah.
So I'll lean towards, I'll vote the Kings, just because I still think I just kind of have more faith in them to play a bit more consistently than the Bolts. But I just genuinely think it's 50-50, but I have to give an answer, so I'll just say like 2-1 to the Kings.
Yeah. Toliy, who you got in this one? Kings versus Bolts.
I think the answer is going to come to who gets Hercules. Is it going to be Haddix or is it going to be Variety? I think both of them showed a great showing in week number 1, so we'll see what happens in week number 2. Maybe there's going to be a counter to Hercules. I'd like to give it to the Camelot Kings. At the end of the day, Big Man, I think, showed up as well with his Giannis and Ra in some of those sets, so I'm excited to see this mid-match of Benenu versus Big Man.
Yeah. Frost?
Right, so, okay. I think you're pairing up a think tank versus perfectionist, right? Again, with you're thinking meta breakers, meta makers. You've got the Kings. I think they're the ones that are going to set the pace here. The Bolts, to me, their team, aside from Ven has actually been very like stellar as far as meta setting goes. Aside from that, though, this team's not notably one that really experiments a lot in that regard. Not in the same way that the Leviathans do, but just they're a little slower to adhere to a meta. I don't know if it's from stubbornness of not wanting to, not believing that that's what it is, or it's just something else going on there. I think they'll catch up, right? But I think at the start of new seasons, they don't do too well. So definitely 2-0 Kings. There's just a very big experimentation gap here.
Yeah. Man, looks like a bunch of good games here to start out this new midseason patch, right? Leviathans, Jade, Kings, Bolts. It seems like both those games are just toss-ups, so I don't know. Maybe I'll be a contrarian. You guys all chose Kings, I think. I think I'll maybe choose the Bolts here and, see how that goes. All right, Frost, why don't you start us off on the next set here, which is going to be the Olympus Bolts versus the Tartarus Titans. Who do you think's going to win?
I think it's going to come down to the supports. This is where they're going to be brawling out, especially with the new changes. No boots. It's really not feeling like a good time for very old school Guardian tankiness. I'm gonna grab an assassin, I'm gonna grab a warrior, and I'm gonna try and run this game. And I feel like the Titans are gonna be able to do that. So that's gonna be 2-0.
2-0 Titans against the Bolts from Frost here. Slainy, how about you? Who do you think?
I should have said it before with the Kings and Bolts, but I think thinking about it now, if there's a player that's probably going to get screwed over by being a bit less tanking and be able to frontline, it's probably Jake. And I think Aurora's like a really, probably like, if not the smartest, like just support. I think he'll be able to like capitalize on those kind of mistakes where Jake will probably be killable, where maybe he's not used to being killable.
Sure.
So I think the Titans will actually be able to exploit that in ways that most other teams probably can't. So I'll actually go 2-1 to the Titans, but I don't think it will be like that if you ask me like a week after that.
Yeah. Toliy, who you got in this one? Bolts versus Titans.
I think it's going to come up to which Jake shows up. Is it going to be the Jake from game number 5 against Jade Dragons when he played that Ares, or is it going to be any other Jake showing? And like Slainy mentioned, Aurora is a beast. We talked about Leviathans versus Jade Dragons, how PPM sets the meta. I think Aurora does the same thing.
Yeah.
This is the Titans' first set in the midseason patch. I love to see how Aurora is going to shake up the meta. I'm going to give it to the Titans 2-0.
2-0. Man, Titans, straight Titans here. A lot of Bolts doubters in these 2 games. It could really, go sort of wrong, especially after the highs of phase 1 here for the Bolts. If they take 2 losses here, that would be unfortunate for them.
It's the supports, man.
I do like your thought process here about Aurora and sort of the meta breakers here. I think I'm probably gonna pick Titans. Slainy, you had a thought there?
Yeah, I don't think like with my predictions, I don't think it's like a shot at the Bolts or anything like that. Yeah. I don't think I don't think the Bolts are like falling or anything like that. I couldn't really see them doing that. I think they're just like cemented, just a really, really good team.
Yeah.
I just think that they just have players that will probably have to adjust a bit more. More than I think like the Titans are, a better team than the Bolts or something.
Sure. All right, Toliy, why don't you start us off on the next set of the week, the Leviathans versus the Oni Warriors. Who you got in this one?
This should be an interesting one. I think Julio didn't have the best showing last week, and I think Nika had a pretty good showing.
I would agree.
So I'm expecting the highlight to be in that solo lane. It's going to come down to which jungler I think is going to outpressure the other to influence the solo lane matchup. And I kind of want to say that Julio is going to step it up. So I'm going to give it to the Leviathans 2-1 in this set.
Sure. Frost, how about you? Who you got in this?
It's a very interesting playstyle that the Leviathans form so far, where they try to funnel everything into Shinto through Panatom. I feel like there's a little more to do on the jungle in this new season, or this new mid-season patch coming through. If they stay to that playstyle, it might spread Panatom a little too thin, and the Warriors might be able to break through there. Otherwise, it's going to be very slow going. I can see both supports just being the type to go, you know what, I'll rush Thebes now. And so this might be the slowest games of the entire weekend. And I think it's going to come out to I'll say 2-1. Warriors get one, Leviathans win it all.
Sure. Slainy, how about you?
I think Neil's probably also going to be one of those supports that's going to have to learn to adjust to lack of tank boots. Neil's a very, very, very in-your-face player, and I think he's probably going to get pretty punished by Leviathans if I had to guess. So I think it's like kind of the same thing where like if you ask me like a week later, maybe I say it's like 2-1 to Leviathans, but I honestly think Leviathans will probably just 2-0 Onis pretty easily.
Sure. Yeah, it's hard to say, man. I think the league is so close. I feel like any one of these could go either way, even, and especially with all the uncertainty of this patch. So I don't know. I'm gonna give it to the Oni Warriors. I'm just feeling contrarian today, I guess. All right, Slainy, why don't you start us off with the next set here, the Jade Dragons versus the Valhalla Valkaries?
I think it's just 2-0 Dragons.
2-0 Dragons?
Yeah, I think the Valks will still have a hard time adjusting. I think they were already behind on the meta before, so I don't really see why they would suddenly be like ahead of the meta now. I still think they're like 5 really good players, so I think they can turn it around and they can take a game. But I just think it should realistically be a 2-0 Dragons pretty easily.
Sure. Toliy?
I'm excited for this set because I know Zeros is going to pull some jank. Like, I mean, when he brought out the Jormungandr in mid upon introduction to the SPL. So who knows what he's going to bring out in this midseason. But I think mechanically, Jade Dragons is just more comfortable. There's always the EU ping that you have to think about with the Valkyries. So at the end of the day, Dragons 2-0, but it should be spicy in this set.
Yeah, let's hope so. Frost? Jade Dragons 2-0 for you, I'm assuming?
2-0. As Slainy said, they kind of had have their own meta due to circumstances.
Yeah.
And unless this season is putting that meta specifically in favor to win it all, it's not going to be pretty. 2-0 Jade Dragons.
2-0 Jade Dragons. All right, Toliy, finish us off here for the week. Scarabs versus Kings. Who you got?
Oh man, Scarabs,
obviously.
Careful or cry.
I got 2 jerseys, on me. I gotta watch out what I say. I agree. But I mean, coming off of that win versus the Dragons,
yeah,
a lot of momentum, I think, for the Scarabs, but it's basically wiped with the mid-season changes. So how did you prepare? Like, did you get 10 minutes of scrim this week, Slainy, or did you get like 100 minutes of scrim? So hopefully Scarabs are a little bit more prepared than they were in the first set against the Titans in week number 1, but it could go either way, honestly, in this set. I think it's going to come down to like who has the better meta and how fast can a team adapt after the game number 1 loss. If Scarabs lose game number 1, I wouldn't be surprised if they bring it back same way they did last week against the Dragons, but Camelot Kings, I think it's going to come down to their earlier set, and if they can really bring it, and I think I'm going to have to give it to the Camelot Kings this week, though. 2-0.
2-0 Kings for Toliy here.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Everyone has their opinions.
Frost, how about you? Scarabs versus Kings.
Mine are the best. Let's see. All right, so Zap, Twig, I think they the way they think, right? Meta defining, meta breaking, whatever it is, I just think is something out of the ordinary. I think Zaps is a bit more targeted usually, and that's sort of what gives them that edge. Nobody likes to be that person that goes, yeah, I plan specifically for this. Everyone likes to say, oh, I'm playing my own game here. But Zap is one to, even though he comes off as very rambunctious, I don't bow down to anyone. He does respect certain players. Twig is one of those that he does respect. And now the Camelot Kings get to start off on Friday. The Scarabs don't. They get to keep something in the pocket. But the other thing could be is that the Kings are starting off first. So what they show may not be what ends up evolving into the Sunday. Right? So it's an element of surprise or how well do the Scarabs take their notes? I will give you you had that week where the servers are trash and you're also playing on an old patch. I think they might be pretty rejuvenated here. This might be my favorite match of the weekend, and I will put it as a 2-1. Love letter to Twig here. 2-1 Scarabs.
Okay.
Let's go.
Save the best here for last, Laney. I'm sure Scarabs 2-0 from you. Any other thoughts about this set?
Oh, none. No, I mean, realistically, I would say I'd like to say 2-0, but I think it'll be a 2-1. I think the Kings are too good of a team to just like assume that we're just going to 2-0 them. it's just off of what Frost said. It's like a double-edged sword. Like going in, we'll be the last team to play on the patch, so we'll get to see what other teams' like thoughts are. But at the same time, getting SPL practice is something that you can't get even in scrims until like everyone plays different on game day, or almost everyone plays different on game day. And getting like kind of practice on and learning your like how your thoughts are is really invaluable.
Yeah.
So the Kings being able to play is a pretty big boost to them. But again, we get to see every team's thought on or take on the meta so far, or initial thoughts. So that will be really helpful to us. I think we're pretty, as a team, we like to think outside of the box, and a lot of the players on the team are always like throwing out ideas into like the group chat and stuff. So I think it'll be two pretty innovative teams here. I think I wouldn't be surprised if there was something special, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if it was even like somewhat similar to how the meta was before. But I think it will just what it'll come down to if there's a World War 2-0, but I think it will be a 2-1 because I think us being able to learn from the other teams will be slightly more of a factor than them being able to play an extra day.
Sure. Yeah, I'm picking 2-0 for the Scarabs here. Can't let down my both boys here.
More confidence than me.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I did want to at least get Frost and Toliy's thoughts here, since you've had at least one day so far to test out things on this new patch. What are sort of your first impressions about this new patch? Is there anything that's really stick out to you? And Slainy, I don't want you to feel pressured into giving anything away here, but feel free to comment on what these guys are saying, or if you have any thoughts, feel free to join in as well.
The most obvious, while at the same time being vague, thing is that any character that did really well with boots is now sort of like taking a bit of a hit, while characters that really felt forced into the boots pickup just because it's 18% movement speed, but I would have rather gotten something else. Those are the ones that are going to shine now. Junglers are absolutely privileged yet again, because again they can skip their boots and get their murder you item instead. Support, traditional guardian, feeling a little rough right now just because you don't have those tanky boots to really hold you over until you have proper tankiness in. Unless for some reason you were good with Stone of Binding. I find that now actually has a spot. It was meant as a sort of transitional item, but before it would go like boots, Stone of Binding, and then another item. Like that's way too slow to get into your core build. So now you don't have to go boots so you just go straight to Stone of Binding into your core build. It's a much better segue, I suppose. While at the same time, Assassin and Warrior supports seem to be benefiting a lot more than a traditional Guardian. Then the question of the map, with a few select buffs such as like mannequins, just because it's traditional, every time the map gets a change, we go into we try so hard to do duo jungle.
Yeah.
Right? So we might maybe see a bit of that, definitely in casuals at least. I feel like there's more room for that with just how spread out the map is and how the timers are going. It really takes you a lot more time, even though there may not be that much more farm and the map wasn't expanded on that big. The combination of the two really makes you have to be on top of your timers.
Sure. Before you go here, Toliy, I just wanted to ask, what are those gods that you think lost a lot with the boots removal? You said there are some gods that really depended on their boots. Can you sort of give some examples for us real quick, or Toliy or Slainy too, if you want to chime in?
Well, I think it was Frost that mentioned some of the gods like that heavily relied on their boots, but I think that instead of pinpointing the gods that relied on the boots, I think that any god that has mobility in their kit is going to fluctuate even higher now. Gods that rely on the stone cutting swords and all the katana trees, Ratatasker, I think, is going to be having a field day in this meta. Bakasura, obviously, as well, with that extra movement speed from his passive, I think is going to see a little bit of playing time. We'll see. Maybe SOT can bring it out in that soul lane if he's willing to experiment with the Chiron. Maybe he's willing to experiment in some other melee class characters. So I'm excited to see how that goes. And also in the hunter position, should see some spicy picks as well now that Cowl has a little bit of MP5.
Yeah. Frost, can you give a couple examples of gods here that you were thinking of when you You said that they sort of need the boots.
Right. So any tanky boot abusers, right?
Okay.
It's going to be a little harder there. Any not movement speed in the kit, but like we've seen Speedy Tier, we've seen Hercules is stacking a lot of that kind of stuff for supports to sort of get into your face. Boots was one of the best. I've got power and I've got movement speed at the same time in the same slot items.
Right.
Now you don't get one or the other. Hunters specifically, the ones that are more ability based, you could kind of with the attack speed from Ninja Tabi. Boost yourself up to be able to box a bit better. Now you're almost like stalled out an extra item, and you're really missing out. I think it's like 25% attack speed. It's one of the core like get your attack based kit online faster. There's going to be a bigger disparity between a character that doesn't have in hand stim.
Sure. Any thoughts from you, Slainy? Like I said, feel free to not give too much away, but are these guys hitting the right notes?
I don't know if I entirely agree with Frost. I think for example with the ADCs, I almost think that they will be more deadly now because you're getting obviously the 40 damage power spike was really big, but 1800 gold you can get pretty similar power whilst having 15 flat pen or 10 flat pen or some other kind of stat whilst still getting the movement speed passively. So I think ADCs might be even stronger early on, even the ability-based ones, even the auto-attack ones, because it's pretty easy to get. It's just awkward. I'm trying to not give too much of away, but
sure.
How
He's
am I
bringing Cairo and Solo back in there.
I just wouldn't be surprised if you see something even like double ADCs, because I genuinely think that the ADCs are going to be really strong right now.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that because there's so much damage in the game right now because of the lack of tank boots, that there's going to be a relatively fast-paced meta. I don't know if it's going to be Snowball, but I think it's going to be quicker than before, especially with all the extra farm on the map. How do I say it? I just think it's going to be a pretty heavy burst meta. Maybe I just completely go back what I said. I think it will just be a burst meta. And I think everyone dying quicker with more gold. I think games are going to be quicker, and I think those early game characters are still going to be just as strong as they were before. And in the ADC role, I just think they're going to be OP early.
Yeah. You think we're going to sort of see the anti-old EU SPL meta where people are just brawling 2 minutes in, 3 minutes in? I mean, Adapting last week was saying how the power spikes are probably going to happen a little bit quicker because there's no, you just lose an item, right, to get your power spike. So is that what you're hinting at there?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Any other... Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say that's a much better way to put it. Just ramble too much.
Any other thoughts about this mid-season patch that you've noticed after playing? I mean, I know you guys haven't played too much. It's this was taped on a Tuesday, and it just came out today. So obviously, these are the very, very first impressions that these people have. I actually haven't even played it, so I can't say anything.
Yeah, I mean, I ran into actually Aurora and Paul in my casual games today, funny enough, on the same team, and they've been experimenting. So we haven't been able to I haven't been able to test out too much right now, but I definitely agree with Slainy that we are going to see a burst meta. I definitely predicted that last week, that the average game length should be going down a little bit now to that 20 to 26 minute mark. I think for most games, the stomps are probably going to be in that 16 to 18 minute sweet spot, potentially even, depending on how things go. Unless players and teams are going to bring out some heavy duty late game style Aphrodite Warlock staff rush, and trying to ramp up there, because I think any lane can realistically, including jungle, because of the no boots, ramp up to stacking items, whether it's Transcendence, Warlock staff, double gloves, even, no matter what they wanted to do. So I think there's a lot of flexibility in these builds without the boots.
Sure. Obligatory is Afro good?
It's just late game meta. If you want to run the EU SPL meta, against the burst, that's how you do it. You have to go some sort of healer and go late game.
Yeah.
Ugh. Rat's weird now too, bro. Oh my god.
Yeah, I think Rat actually got a bunch of even the red bluestone upgrade one seems pretty cool on him. there's like loads of changes about Rat. I think.
Well,
it's,
and
like,
he's
gonna
got
be one of the
extra
most
movement
flexible
speed
builds.
over everyone else,
Yeah.
right? So
To be fair, though, he
Smooth
kind of had that
movement
anyway, though.
He
always,
did.
but-
It's a bigger gap now, right?
yeah,
It
that's
is,
true.
it is.
Slightly bigger gap, and also he's not forced to get his nut to begin with because that was your boots, right? So you had to start that. Now you can just kind of get your other item and then like go one item and then stay out farming, and you can upgrade your nut outside of the fountain.
Yeah, it's a good thing to mention there, Frost.
It was actually kind of nasty. That's why adapting was screaming last week. I bet.
Rat being OP.
Yeah. I think it's like season 8. A lot of unknown, a lot of new. It's gonna be fun, a lot of experimentation. Depending on how it's balanced out, or depending on how much risk versus reward is on the map, this could be a very fast, as Slainy said, maybe not snowbally, but very big brawl meta. Or it could just play out to we lose too much if we lose a fight, so we're better off just defending and getting our own farm. It could go either way, that it's going to be shorter 18-minute games, or it's just going to be the same old 40 minutes.
Sure. Thanks for watching the SPL Rundown this week. Be sure to catch us every week here on Smite Game before the SPL. If you want to catch past episodes or extended cuts, be sure to catch them on the APAM Productions YouTube channel and give us a like and subscribe. We really appreciate that. If you have any ideas for guests, feel free to DM me on Twitter at APAM2 or at APAM Productions. And finally, I'd like to give a big shout out here to the analysts who joined me and give them a chance to promote their socials. Frost, why don't you start us off here?
I'm still the other Frost on Twitch, on Twitter, on YouTube.
Slainy?
Slainy Smite on Twitter. Make sure you support us by our in-game cosmetics or jerseys or anything like that. All the proceeds go to the guys, so that's obviously super helpful to all of us.
Yeah, shop.smiteproleague.com. Toliy, round us out here.
My Twitter, IG Anatoly, and recently changed my Twitch handle to just Toliy now.
All right, thank you so much for joining us, guys. And thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys next week.